If you'd all take your seats, please. We'll continue our program. It's my honor now to introduce Ruth Friendly. Ruth spent 17 years in the Scarsdale public school system, teaching and working extensively on curriculum development for grades K through 6. In 1981, she joined her husband Fred to work on his media and society seminars, working as a researcher, editor, producer, and executive producer. She was part of a team that won countless awards for a number of PBS series, beginning with a program called The Constitution, That Delicate Balance. She also produced dozens of non-televised programs which Fred moderated for civic, legal, business, and educational organizations. That work continued even after Fred retired, eventually became the Fred Friendly Seminars, evolving into the perfect blend of an educator's love of the teachable moment with a devotion to meticulous journalistic standards. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my honor to present Ruth Friendly.
I was just thinking as I came up here of all the firsts, all the coups that Barbara has had with those hundreds of programs and interviews she's done. Well, today it's our coup. We have Barbara Walters. A huge thank you to Quinnipiac, to you, President Leahy, to you, Dean Camlett, Lynn Bushnell, Colin Italian, your stalwart staff, for remembering Fred in such a meaningful way at this glorious 21st Fred-friendly First Amendment Luncheon. When I think of Fred, I think of the word passion. That's what comes to mind, passion for what he did. My competition was never another woman. My competition was his work. He had a favorite poem that he used to paraphrase. When love and work are one, then the world's work gets done. Passionate engagement makes me think of you, Barbara Walters, someone committed to her profession who recognized that no obstacles would stand in her way. Someone who never let a glass ceiling get in the way either. Barbara, you didn't just break glass ceilings, you pulverized them. It's harder for many of us to recall those early days, so let's go way back to almost the beginning. It was at NBC. Barbara started as a writer, and it was on the Today Show. And they had to have one woman, so she was it. They also had to have a woman on air. That was the Today showgirl, relegated to froth and frivolity. And when that person didn't come in or went on vacation, Barbara got to take her place. And that led to Barbara's first on-air appearance. She was covering a fashion show in Paris, no less, and she was good. In 1964, she was hired to be on air full-time. Barbara Walters and Hugh Downs hosted the Today Show, except there was no co-host title for Barbara. That didn't exist for women. Hard to believe. When Frank McGee replaced Hugh in 1971, Barbara finally, officially, was made co-host. A glass ceiling smashed. But there were strings attached. It was specified that when doing on-air interviews, McGee would get to ask the first 3 questions, and then Barbara was allowed to ask 1. However, Barbara found a way around that. She learned that if she filled an interview outside of the studio, she could ask all the questions. And so she did, interviewing Henry Kissinger, Haldeman of Watergate, Truman Capote, Mamie Eisenhower, to name a few. She was the first woman co-host of the Today Show, and she transformed that job. Barbara had been at NBC for 13 years when Ruth Arledge of ABC made her an offer that was hard to turn down. Co-anchor of the ABC Evening News, another female first. Who could say no? ABC's Evening News anchor then was Harry Reasoner. He had no stomach for a co-anchor, and certainly not a woman. It was really tough sledding for Barbara. Luckily, her ABC contract also called for primetime specials. She may have felt that she was sinking in the evening news, but those specials saved her. Arledge rescued her from the uncomfortable anchor chair and set her career back on course. She joined in partnership again with Hugh Downs, and she was an anchor for 2020, turning an initial setback at ABC into really a dazzling 3-decade success. Barbara has interviewed despots and dancers, mayors and murderers, scores of Hollywood stars, national and international leaders, and 8 presidents of the United States. Her painstaking preparation is legendary. It may start with scrawled questions on 3x5 cards that get changed and rearranged and replaced endlessly. But those questions get etched in her mind. She may think she needs them in hand, but she doesn't. Barbara proved that to herself the hard way. During an interview with President Nixon, it was his first since Watergate. The stakes were high. As soon as Barbara began, she realized that she didn't have her list of questions. The show was being done live, so there was no stopping to find them. No problem. She hit the ball out of the ballpark, finishing with a question that everyone in our nation wanted to ask President Nixon. Are you sorry you didn't burn the tapes? It was only after Nixon had answered yes, and the interview had ended, that Barbara discovered her list of questions, stashed in a safe place. She had been sitting on them. Morning television, evening news, primetime specials, a weekly news magazine. You might think that was enough for one career, but not for Barbara. She went on to start a new daytime TV genre 17 years ago with The View. It's still running. It is still a success. Barbara, I know that you have announced your retirement. I don't doubt your sincerity. But frankly, you don't strike me as the retiring type. You have what Fred Friendly used to describe as a fire in the belly. You may not have a belly, but you have that fire. And that kind of passion doesn't die easily. Fred used to go around saying, I'm flunking retirement. Let's see what happens. But meanwhile, we all salute you. And in recognition of all you have done, of all you have accomplished, I am thrilled that today you are the recipient of Quinnipiac's Fred Friendly Lifetime Achievement Award. Congratulations. And come join me on the podium.
I just want to tell you, she did her homework. You get my prize.
You taught me.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, my goodness. Well, I have known about this award for many years and have colleagues who have received it and attended some of the special luncheons. So I'm really more than thrilled. I mean, this is not just another award. This is my peers, and these are people I care about. I thank all of you who came from ABC, and I thank the others who came who didn't have to come. The ABC people didn't have to come, but I know which ones came. But this is a very special occasion for me. When you were talking about my past, Ruth, and you had it, I mean, there wasn't one thing that was inaccurate, even the bad times. I think of when I was doing the Today Show, and I lived right across the street from Carnegie Hall, and on the other side of the street were the ladies of the evening. When I left at 4 o'clock in the morning to go into the studio, I would be carrying a garment bag. I wasn't made up, but it looked as if I had just come from a high-rise apartment with a garment bag, 4 o'clock in the morning. I wasn't a chicken even then, and I would look at the ladies of the evening, and they would look at me, and I gave them hope. So, if you're an artist, you can show your painting. If you're a musician, you can play your sonata. So I thought what I would do instead of making a formal speech, I picked 3 interviews that have meaning to me and that I thought might have meaning to you. And let me do that instead of making a formal speech. The first person I wanted to talk about was Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher. I interviewed her practically from the beginning, before she was Prime Minister, first in 1983. As you know, she was Great Britain's first female Prime Minister, her longest-serving Prime Minister. And I chose her, and I chose this section because I have retired. Well, not exactly, but it is going to be a different phase of my life. I said that I would do special assignments, but I'm not going to be on The View every day, and I still have the feeling sometimes when I watch The View, I should be there, I should be participating, and then I think of Margaret Thatcher, because when her own party ousted her after all of the years, they voted her out, her own party, and she was in a terrible state, and she wrote about it. And then I did the first interview with her after she left office. This is on March 8th, 1997. She said, "It's traumatic. It really is. You're so busy doing things you don't realize it until you're out. And it comes in strange ways. Even now, when we're driving down Whitehall towards Westminster to go home, which is not very far away, all of a sudden my mind thinks, we'll turn right into Downing Street. And then I realize we're not going to. It's the habit of years which get you. The telephone goes, and immediately you think, oh, goodness me, the United Nations is sitting. I wonder what happened. You'll hear something in the news in the morning, and you think, we can't have that. I must inquire what's happening. We really must make a statement about it. I leap up to dial the telephone, and then I realize it's no longer me anymore. That's the way I felt this morning when I watched The View. The other interview that I chose is Katharine Hepburn. And I chose Katharine Hepburn, this particular interview, because one of the things that women, and now men too, are trying so hard to do is to have some balance in your life. How much time can I give my children, my marriage, my partner? How much time do I have to give to the news, which is all-consuming, as we know. If you love it, it's day and night. And I talked with Katharine Hepburn about if you could have a career and a marriage and children. By the way, one of the things I liked about Hepburn was that she was very definite. I'm not. I see all kinds of sides, and I see sides when there aren't sides when I'm doing an interview. And I said that to her. She said, I see things in black and white. I said, I see things in gray. And she said, well, I pity you. Okay. So I said, can you have a career and marriage and children? And she said, well, you couldn't when I started it. At least you couldn't have a marriage that would please me, because the ladies are going to have to be careful that they don't all marry morons. I said, well, why? Well, she said, because they don't deliver the goods. as wives. I mean, we're very confused sexually. We're very confused. I mean, look at the birds and the beasts and the male and the female, and there are rather definite types. We're getting awfully confused. I put on pants 50 years ago and declared a sort of middle road, you know, but I mean, I have not lived as a woman. I have lived as a man. And I said, how? She said, well, I've just done what I damn well wanted to. I've made enough money to support myself, and I ain't afraid of being alone. So I said, is it so hard to have it all? The marriage, the children, the career? I said, I think it's very tough. She said, it's impossible. If I were a man, I would not marry a woman with a career, and I would torture myself as a mother. Supposing little Johnny or little Katie had the mumps, and I had an opening night, I'd want to strangle the children. I would really want to strangle the children. And I would be thinking to myself, God, I've got to get into the mood. What's the matter with him and them? Out of my way. So if you were a man, you would not marry a woman with a career? She said, nope. I wouldn't be that big a fool. And I'd want her to be interested in me, not a career. And a career is fascinating. I don't know what the hell women are going to do. Well, we're doing okay. And that sounds very passé, doesn't it? Except for I made enough money to support myself, and I ain't afraid of being alone. But it's still a balancing act, I think, for all of us. The private life, the public life, the professional life, especially in news, because it is a passion, and it is something that takes over our whole lives. I also said to her, do you remember the last time we talked? I have done something I have regretted ever since. By the way, if those of you who are much younger than I stick around to read my obituary, it will say that I asked people what kind of a tree they wanted to be. I would like to clear that up. I do not do interviews in which I ask people, in general, what kind of a tree they want to be. So I said to Hepburn, do you remember the last time we talked? I did something I've regretted ever since. We were talking about your getting on, and you said, which people don't remember, I'm like an old tree. And I said, what kind of a tree? And you said, Hepburn answered, an oak tree. I said, yes, an oak. Everybody forgets that you said you were like a tree. And they keep saying, why did she ask that wonderful Katharine Hepburn what kind of a tree, right? And Hepburn said, I wonder what kind of a tree people are all the time, don't you? You didn't mean that question? She said, I look out and I know I'm not that damn sycamore in the backyard that drops its branches and is liable to kill people. I'm not a silly, pretty little tree. I'm a wonderful oak tree. And I saw one this big in the woods, a white oak with branches that go right through the wall. Great, like that. So that's why it's one of my favorite interviews. And she's one of my favorite people because there is that definiteness about her. There is that certainty. And in the world in which all of us live now, it's sort of refreshing to meet someone who sticks by her opinions and knows exactly what they are. The last interview that I wanted to read to you from are the words of Christopher Reeve. He was one of the most extraordinary men that I've ever met. And I read his words to you because you should know that if ever things do not go your way, you can live through it. You can survive. Your life can have a purpose. Christopher Reeve was a fine actor. He was famous, as you may recall, for playing Superman on film. He was a superb athlete. He sailed, he skied. Most of all, he was a skilled horseman until 1995 when his horse failed to jump over a hurdle in a riding competition, and it fell, the horse with him, and he found himself completely paralyzed from the neck down. I did an interview with him in September of 1995, and I remembered that he talked about the fact that he'd said to his wife, his wife said to him, do you want me to pull the plug? And she said, I don't want to because you are still you. But if you want me to, I will find a way to pull the plug. She left the room. He was laying in the bed with all of the tubes and everything, paralyzed from the neck down. When a doctor came in a white coat and said to him, I'm a proctologist, turn over. And Reeve looked at him and said, what? He said, I'm a proctologist, turned over. And when Reeve was thinking, what am I going to do? How am I going to get in touch with the nurse? This doctor doesn't realize my condition. He looked up and realized it was Robin Williams. He had gone to Juilliard with Robin Williams. And Reeve burst out laughing, and he said then, I knew that if I could laugh, I could live. This is from the interview with Christopher Reeve. You gradually discover, as I'm discovering, that your body is not you, and the mind and the spirit must take over. And that's the challenge as you move from obsessing about why me, and it's not fair, and when will I move again, and you move into, well, what is the potential? And now I see opportunities and potential I wasn't capable of seeing, because every moment is more intense and valuable than it ever was. I've received 100,000 letters from all over the world, and it makes you wonder, why do we need disasters to really feel and appreciate each other? I'm overwhelmed by people's support of me. And if I can help people understand that this can happen to anybody, that's worth it right there. So I really sense being on a journey. I said, do you think you will walk again? And Reeve said, I think it's very possible I'll walk again. And if you don't, then I won't walk again. As simple as that. He said, either you do or you don't. It's like a game of cards. And if you think the game is worthwhile, then you just play the hand you're dealt. Sometimes you get a lot of face cards, sometimes you don't. But I think that the game is worthwhile. I really do. Christopher Reeve made a good life with his wife Dana and 3 children. He lectured, he directed films, he starred in a remake of Rear Window. He raised millions of dollars in the consciousness of scientists to promote research into stem cells, hoping to cure the thousands and thousands of people suffering from spinal cord injury. His life, though very hard, had meaning and purpose. His death in October of 2004 was a very great loss. This was a special man who dealt with the cards that he was dead. Well, what have we learned, if anything, from doing interviews or from talking to people like this? Not everyone can be a hero. We can aspire to be. Not everyone can or should leave a country. Few these days want to lead a country. Nor is it vital to be a leader, but it's important to have some of the qualities of leadership. So when I was going through this, I wrote down what I think are the qualities you have to have if you're going to live any kind of a fulfilling life. There has to be something you have to do. Most important, something you want to do. You have to have someone to love and love you, not necessarily a family. Sometimes it's just friends. I don't have a big family. I have 1 child. I would be lost without my friends. You have to have spirituality of some sort. I don't mean that it has to be religion. It can be ethics. It can be a philosophy. You have to have strength of purpose in mind. And then, whatever hand you are dealt, I hope you find that the game is worthwhile and that you feel like a great oak with branches that go right through the wall. I feel today like a great oak standing here with people whom I admire and respect and who understand my world and participated and are so successful in your own. I thank you for this honor. I will never retire as long as there can be days like this.
Barbara, thank you for those words. Thank you for all the people you've brought to our lives over the past decades and will continue to bring. thank you all for coming. I hope you enjoyed yourselves. We appreciate your coming. Have a good afternoon.